Okay, let me.
I don't know why
Yes,
the kid
the
in the background is
deficient
coming to calm down.
deficient
Just quiet
causes
down for a
necessity.
second, kid.
Deficient. Hello,
Just
hello.
listen to the ending, bro.
Deficient cause is
Whatever the
necessary.
kid just said.
Hello. So you want me to ping now?
No, I'm waiting for the person to join the voice call to start the recording.
Uh,
Okay, he's in the voice call. Diesel, here.
Yo, what's good?
I'm good. Bro, this guy unironically is LARPing this synth, bro. What the fuck is going on? How can he be this much of a dork? Anyways, dude, so Tohno, so just to be clear, you say that you're defending the position that God exists, right? And by God, you're just talking about the first sufficient cause, right?
efficient cause.
Of all
Efficient
things.
cause. Yes.
Sufficient cause. Is this thing necessary or non-necessary?
Yes, it is necessary.
Okay, gotcha, cool. So
It
it's a
it
necessary being. Gotcha. So
it
I'm
could
gonna
not
just
have.
give this argument real quickly, and you're gonna just tell me which premise you reject, right? And by necessary, to
No,
be
wait,
clear,
wait, wait.
right? You're just talking about.
I have a directive argument for theism. Should I post it
I
in
know you have a
the
deductive argument, but I'm just gonna give like an argument because of like called it first, to be honest. And also, not to mention, by necessary, are you talking about necessary index to logical modality or no?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha, cool. So here's an argument, which one could offer against theism, right? So premise one, if
Wait.
it is logically
Post it in the
possible.
side. Post it in the side chat. Post it in the side chat.
Yeah, I will post it in the side chat. This is gonna be easy. Alrighty. Okay. Alright, delete. Okay, so here's just going to be the argument in favor of the negation of your position, right? And what's going to happen is you're going to have to like basically reject one of the premises, of course, because the argument is valid. It's a modus ponens argument, right? So premise one states that if it is logically possible for a no-no to exist, then God does not exist. Premise two states it is logically possible for a no-no to exist. The conclusion of the argument ends with God does not exist, right? No-no is just some given hypothetical entity such that that entity knows that God does not exist, right? So what's going to be the logical contradiction in no existing?
So, do you think God is mind dependent or something? Dependent on the thoughts of no or whatever.
Well, the no is just a being that exists, right? It's just a being that knows that God does not exist by definition. I'm asking you for your position to actually be something which is even correct, right? It has to be the case that it is logically impossible for a no to exist, right? And I'm asking you, do you believe it is logically impossible, yes or no? And if so, where's the contradiction in the sentence no exist?
Then God doesn't exist. I deny premise one. Obviously.
Premise one is analytically true, so that's going to be a retarded
No,
objection. Right?
that's not. Do you know what an analytic truth is? It's
Yes,
something
I
that
do. I know what an
that
analytic
is
truth
something
is. Given the
something that is
definition of
true by
it
taking
would in fact be the case that God would not exist if no was to exist. Because all no is just any given being that knows that God does not exist. If no knows that God does not exist, then God does not exist because one of the conditions for knowledge is truth, is factuality, right? That's
no
just going to be analytically true. So premise one is not going to be the premise you're going to want to deny here.
no because um, God is something that which none greater can, because it is something with maximal causal power, etc., etc. It does not depend on the doxastic state of rational agent.
Never said it depends on the doxastic state of the being. I'm saying it depends on if the being exists or not. If this being exists, then God could not exist.
So, do you think there's a grounding
What do you think
relation
the
between?
definition of no is in this given conversation?
Wait. Do you think this being has a grounding relation with God?
Yes,
How's that? If
because of
God
the
is,
fact that there's a logical contradiction in God existing and this being existent simultaneously. So it has to be one, not both, that exist at the same time. So I'm asking you right now, what do you think
how's that?
defines no-no? What
Um,
defines no-no?
do you think no is a contingent thing or
No, no, no,
necessary
no, no,
thing?
no. No, it's just tell me what defines no-no, right? So what defines no-no?
So, you give the argument, please
Yeah,
define
so
what
the
no is.
defining conditions for no-no is just the act of knowing that God does not exist. That's what defines no-no, right? So if there exists a being that has the act of knowing that God does not exist, then God could have not existed if that being was to exist.
But a
Do
thing
you
like God.
understand the entailment?
So please, answer me. Does no exist in space and time?
That's irrelevant to the point you're talking about. So we're not talking about if it exists spatiotemporally or
Please answer
non-spatiotemporally. It
the
doesn't
question.
matter how it doesn't matter how it exists. It doesn't matter how it looks. It doesn't matter if it has a
No,
freaking dick or it
it
does not have
matters.
a
It
dick.
matters.
That's
Please,
irrelevant.
please.
Like all of these points
Bro,
all of
bro.
these points regarding the potential properties of this being is irrelevant. Whether it has a dick or whether it is
No.
spatiotemporal or whether it's
Wait.
non-spatiotemporal, it's irrelevant. We're
Apollo.
talking specifically. We're talking specifically because you're diverted right now. All we're talking
Yeah,
about here
Apollo has a
is
tiny
this
dick.
being. What defines no-no is just the characteristic of knowing that God does not exist. That's it. If there was
Okay.
to be a being
No.
that exists, which knows
Wait.
that God does not exist, then God could have not existed. Do you understand this? Yes or no?
Bro. Please answer me. Does no exist in
You're going off
a
points again. You're
spaceship?
derailing. You're
Bro.
irrelevant. Red herring fallacy.
No. It's
Irrelevant.
relevant. It's relevant. Answer me, bro.
The Apollo has a
Completely
tiny
irrelevant.
dick.
Answer
Yes,
me.
could you address the argument, please?
Answer me, please.
Nice diversion. Respond to the point.
No.
Respond to
It,
the argument.
bro. Please answer me. Does no exist in a spatio-temporal region?
Irrelevant.
Because
Stay on point.
we
Yes, get back on point.
because we know the fact that something like God, that has maximal causal power, would exist aspatial and atemporally. And if no exists
Irrelevant.
in a spatial,
It is irrelevant how no exists. The fact is, if no exists, God does not exist. No, the being no is just defined as any given existent entity such that, well, any given entity, not existent. I don't want to define it into existence, but any given entity such that it would in fact be the case, sorry, that this being necessarily knows that God does not exist, right? So if this being was to exist, right,
yo,
then
you
it would in
you
fact be the case that there exists a being that necessarily knows that God does not exist. That means
bro,
it's impossible for this being to exist and for it to not know that God does
bro,
not
bro,
exist. It
bro.
has to know that God does not exist.
In order to know that something like God exists or not, a rational agent would have to have epistemic access to the nominal world.
For you to know that God exists, you'd have to know that it is impossible for
Bro,
no to exist. Which is
let
I'm
me
asking
talk,
you for the contradiction.
bro. Hey, Nene, can you mute Apollo, please?
Why would I get muted? You've been over talking to me multiple
No.
times. We
Okay.
have been like literally going back and forth the entire
Sorry.
time.
Okay. So let me say something. For in order for something like God, in order for us to know something like God exists or not, a rational agent would have to have epistemic access to the nominal world. Because something like God that has maximal causal power, something that's supernatural, exists in the nominal world, which we cannot have direct
That's not
epistemic access to.
necessary, no.
We can only know about the nominal world through rational reasoning. We cannot know for sure if.
Gibberated.
Hello.
So I'm telling you right now that, oh my god, why is Diesel?
Yo, what's up?
Why is every debater just so fucking garbage? It's like there's no good debaters don't exist anymore. It's like fucking
Bro, we need to
hell.
find you some new debates, man.
You guys are
Apollo.
fucking horse shit. Look, dude, just shut the fuck up. Look, I'm gonna explain this from fucking scratch, right? You guys are pissing me the fuck off. Dude, no. Okay, it's a very simple fucking argument. I don't know why you guys are so trash at fucking debating and philosophy. No, by definition. The definition of no, okay, just walk with me, okay? Please, I'm begging you. No, right? What defines no is just a being that necessarily knows that God does not exist. Comprehending? Now, if that being was to fucking exist, right? Do you understand that it is incompatible with God existing if that being was to exist? If there was to actually be a being like no, God could not exist by definition because no by definition knows that God does not exist. And if you know a particular proposition to be
Right,
true, that proposition is true by
bro.
definition. Now it is irrelevant. Stop talking because you're crying about interruptions,
Yo,
right?
yo, yo.
So it is
Listen, listen.
irrelevant. It is irrelevant. It is irrelevant. Stop talking. It is irrelevant as to whether or not we have epistemic access to the noumena, right? Which, by the way, the word noumena would not be a proper usage given the context. Noumena is a Kantian or neo-Kantian terminology that does not fit the context of what you're talking about, because even in Kant's works, he's not going to be saying something like the noumena being a part of the he would be saying something like God being within the noumena, by the way, just to be clear. So like you're using Kantian terminologies or neo-Kantian terminologies and basically misapplying them to basically try to sound smart. But moving on from that, right? Because you're an idiot. The point I'm making here is simply, if no was to exist, because what defines no is the act of knowing that God does not exist, it would be the case that God does not exist.
Bro,
Therefore, premise one is going to necessarily be true. It's just an analytic fact. It's what defines no. It's baked into the concept of no that it
yo,
necessarily knows that God does not exist.
but
Inside
You
you
should be
you do
rejecting
aspirates.
premise
you do
two,
agree
not
with the
premise one.
you do agree with the fact that a spatio-temporal entity like a human
Oh
cannot
my
have
fucking
knowledge about
god!
an aspatial and atemporal thing, or
Why is
rather,
that? Why is that impossible? Why can't it have knowledge on the factuality of the non-spatial temporal
yo
dimension?
yo.
Why can't you give us why?
Do you think a spatio-temporal entity can see platonic
I
forms?
don't believe that. I'm asking you, why would it be impossible for a spatial temporal entity to have knowledge on the status quo of the non-spatial temporal world? What's the impossibility? Why?
I'm saying a spatio-temporal entity cannot have a posteriori knowledge about an aspatial and atemporal
Who claimed
realm.
that the knowledge is a posteriori?
You mean
What the
a
fuck are you
priori?
talking about? It's like you just created the Disney fairy tale version of the argument and attacked that version instead. No one talked about the nature of the knowledge. The whole idea is no and knows that God does not exist. Okay, it doesn't talk about the type of
It,
knowledge that's being possessed by none. It doesn't talk about
it,
if the
that,
knowledge is the type of thing.
does he,
Stop,
wait,
relax,
wait.
dude. You gotta pipe down for a second, right? So
Okay, okay.
it doesn't talk about if the knowledge is a posteriori or a priori. That's irrelevant to the argument. The whole idea is no, if it was to exist, knows that God does not exist. And it's not even dependent on if it exists. Even if it does not exist, even if no does not exist, it would still be the case that by definition it knows that God does not exist. That's the whole point. Now, again, I'm telling you that given the definition of no, premise one is true. What you should be doing right now is reject premise two and actively give an argument against premise two. Because if you don't debunk premise two, then that means your argument
Rejecting.
is necessarily, or your position is necessarily false.
So let me ask you the question again. Does no know that God does not, according to your argument, does no not know that God doesn't exist in virtue of his or her intuitions or something? Let me ask you.
Let's say I make a claim that the type of knowledge that no possesses is conceptually vague. Now what? Now all of
How
your
do you,
questions become irrelevant, right? Because if I'm making the claim that the knowledge that no has is conceptually opaque, then that means I'm not going to know the epistemic mechanisms, the
define.
functional
Hello,
mechanisms of his
yo, bro.
knowledge. So you asking me about the functionality of his knowledge would be irrelevant to the goddamn argument, because I'm going to be making the claim right now that the functionality is conceptually opaque. Now what?
How do you define something named conceptually opaque, bro?
So we
Please.
don't have full epistemic access to the relevant conceptual content of a given particular object. Right. So I'm not going to be able to explain to you the mechanisms of a particular thing, like in this particular context, being his knowledge of whether or not it is the case that the proposition is true. Now that does not in any way debunk the first premise, because the first premise is talking about, okay, it's talking about a specific relation, right? It's talking about a implication relation between the antecedent and the consequence.
No,
Now, of course, if it is baked into the definition of no, that it is the case that it knows that God does not exist, and premise one is
so
saying that if no exists, then there would
so
be a being that knows
if
that God does not
yo
exist,
bro,
and that's going to be necessarily true. So the conditional sentence is satisfied. Is meant to satisfy build conditions.
yo, so It's modest. Wait, let me read it again. So, if no one's knowledge about God not existing is fallible, like it's gained through his or her intuitions, because we all know that our intuitions can
Doesn't matter if
fail.
it's fallible.
Our
If he
intuitions can
knows
fail
the prop to
sometimes.
be true, then that means it is
So,
true, irrespective
so,
of the fallibility
so
that
it may
exists.
be it may be the case that it's logically possible for both God and no to exist, because no's knowledge about God not existing can be fallible, because it
Doesn't
is
matter. The act of knowing.
because
So even if it is fallible, it would still entail the proposition that God does not exist.
um do,
Because now fallibility is just to say that it is epistemically possible. They're just saying that is so. What it's saying right there is that it is epistemically possible, for there to be some given data D, which would count as evidence against the conclusion C, such that the conclusion being that God does not exist is false, and the data D would be evidence for the proposition being false. However, it would still be the case that under the condition that he knows the proposition, then necessarily it is true, right? So indexed to the fact of it being the case that it knows the prop, it is sure that it is the case that God does not exist. And if that is true, then God does not exist
so
necessarily.
what so you're saying that what he knows can be fallible, yet it follows modus ponens that God doesn't exist. So are you familiar with
Oh my God.
the distinction between formal and logical validity, bro?
I shouldn't have to be teaching what epistemic humility is, right? Like, you know what epistemic humility is, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
What is epistemic humility?
Knowledge can be flawed. Yes.
Okay, so you understand that in the context of what you're talking about here, like in our epistemology, right? If we have a particular claim we know to be the case, right? Could be any claim, right? And this claim is known to be true, right? It being known to be true does not entail that it is necessarily true. However, if under the condition it is known to be true, it has to be the case it is true. So just to clarify the difference there's a difference between something being a necessary fact and something necessarily being true under the condition that it is known to be true. I'm telling you here that even if it is not the case that it is necessarily true that God does not exist, given fallibility, epistemic humility, whatever epistemic gaps that would exist in a given world. The point of the matter is that if it is the case that there is to be a being that knows that God does not exist, then necessarily it follows from that antecedent that God does not exist. And if that is the case, then you could not make the argument for God existing because remember, you're defining God to be a necessary being, right? So given the facts that you're baking into the concept of God that it is a necessary object, it is logically necessary, then any possibility of God not existing entails that God does not exist. And so, if you're granted the possibility of there being a being knowing that God does not exist, even if it is just a case of fallibility, the point of the matter is such possibility necessarily entails that God does not exist. It neglects your position, epistemically speaking.
So what if I denied the existence of possible worlds? So are you a model realist or a model fictionalist about possible worlds in
Holy
this
fucking
case?
shit. We can get to conclusions. I'm sorry,
Wait,
you're
wait.
just too branded for this.
Okay,
You're
okay.
just
Wait, wait, wait.
This is literally a repetition of a Seba moment. Is that what his name is? Seba? This is fucking.
Yo,
That's not even relevant to what we're talking. Modal realism or anti-realism or fictionalism is irrelevant to what we're talking about. That's just assessing
okay, okay.
the metaphysical profile of possibilities. We're not talking about the metaphysical profile of possibilities. We're talking about the factuality propositions relating to
Okay.
possibilities.
No, okay, yeah. Would you like to
Yeah, we can
respond
get
to
to
my
conclusions.
argument for God's existence? Hello?
You're wasting my time. Let's set the conclusions. Give your conclusions first.
Yo,
You're
Apollo,
just not equipped for these conversations.
Apollo. Would you like
Do
to
you think you
respond?
won this debate? I've
Wait,
responded to every single point you've just mentioned.
wait, wait,
I've
wait.
even responded to your most recent question by pointing out that the question was irrelevant to my point. So we can
Uh,
get to conclusions.
Wait. Would you like
I'm
to
not wasting
respond?
my time any
Wait.
further. You're just too
Yo,
mutant on start. You're too brain dead. So,
Apollo.
conclusions.
Uh,
I know I
Apollo,
want this debate. Let's do the conclusions.
Apollo. Would you like to respond to my argument for God's
I would
existence?
like to. I responded to every single trash dog shit responses I've given. I would love to head to conclusions right now. I think you're a waste of my time, genuinely. Look, if you want to get some amps afterwards, I can amp you on some given topics, but I just think you're wasting my time right now. I'm not here to give you
Conclusions.
seminars on metaphysics and logic
Yeah,
and
it's time for
philosophy.
a
I'm not here
poll
for that.
to
You're not my
debate
student.
the big
All right, so we can have conclusions.
days.
So with
Yo,
that being
yo.
said, I'm not sure who that monkey is piping up. So you can give your conclusions first, Tono, and then after, let's just give my conclusions
Yo,
afterwards.
yo, would you like to
It's a waste of my
respond
time.
to my
Sorry.
argument for God's existence? Yo,
I've responded to every single point you've just mentioned. If you don't think I've responded, you can enter conclusions. If you don't believe I responded, if you think you won, confidently so, then we can enter conclusions.
so you don't. So do you think that a first efficient cause is not necessary
I've
for
already called the
reality to
conclusions. I'm not
exist?
sure what you're even talking about right now. Like, I've
Yeah,
already
yeah.
addressed every single thing you've said.
Because
Like, you've
because
not
at the
addressed the
beginning, yo,
argument, you've
yo,
not debunked the argument, you've not contradicted the argument, you've not falsified any of the premises of the argument. You're just wasting everyone's time here, including
Yo,
mine.
Apollo.
Sorry.
yo, bro.
Apollo.
By the way, these on the recorder, just make sure to turn down that monkey piping up, okay?
Apollo. Is a tree like little teenager?
Ooh.
So
Nah, I
my
thought the
conclusions
recording
for the debate
ended.
is simply these. I'm just gonna force conclusions
What
because this guy's just genuinely a waste of
you
time.
didn't
Silent
So
answer.
here's my
speech.
Yo,
conclusions of the debate, right?
Remember
Because this
SpongeBob
guy's a
ass.
waste of time. Doesn't know what he's talking about, right? So just make sure to turn down everyone else, right? So my conclusions for the debate is simply that, of course, because of his ineptitude in philosophy and logic and metaphysics, he just went on to derail points. And by he specifically, I'm talking about Tono. Given the very simple modus ponens argument, which I would actually favor the proposition that God does not exist. Not to say I actually believe in the conclusion that God does not exist. However, it is the case that my argument would entail that God does not exist. He was rejecting the first premise the entire time, even though the first premise
Dirty
is
ass boy.
analytically true, right? And so, in conclusion, just to wrap things up, the fact of him not rejecting premise two, which is that it is logically possible for a no to exist, and also the fact that I've already established the beyond the reasonable doubt that premise one is true, which is just to say that there's some sort of implication relation between the antecedents and the consequent there, then it would just go through. The argument would go through. The argument would be successful. He gave a really dumb fuck dipshit response, though, which came in the form, funnily enough, of him asking me from a modal realist or fictionalist, which is irrelevant if it is logically possible, right? So, in other words, I think my opponent got completely demolished, and there was also a typical black monkey piping up while the debate was going on, and it get muzzled 2 times on the recording. So I find it pretty funny also. So with that being said, I think that's basically for the recording.
Wait, why did I get stripped?
If there's any other person who's down to debate me, though, they can ping me in the chat, tell me what topic they want to debate on, and their stance, and that's it. Anyways, these way
Got
out.
you.
Peace.
Hey, Apollo, can you do a
Yeah,
quick one?
Apollo,
Wait,
we
don't
want to
leave,
debate you on...
don't leave, don't leave. What is
Oh,
it?
he left already.
Oh, that's the dodge. I guess I gotta go.
Apollo, what the fuck?